Today on Law Weekly, lawyers react to the call for death penalty to be introduced for corruption cases. The country's organized labor through the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Council made the case for the death penalty after a series of protests in some states across the country. On our interview segment, the former president of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, Boma Ozobia, speaks about the need for more female inclusion in the government, the anti-graft war of the government, and much more. This is Law Weekly on Channels Television, and I am Shola Shaylee. Now, please note that some of the images we'll show on the program today contain flash photography. Let's begin with a call by some segments of civil society and organized labor for the country to introduce death penalty as a sentence for conviction on corruption charges. I spoke to some lawyers about the call, and majority of them believe that it is a rather extreme call.
Their sentence may not in any way be in accordance with international standard. We are a global village. I mean, almost everywhere now people are trying to abolish death penalty in their criminal code, and so we cannot be an exception. So I think that we shouldn't blame them for those extreme suggestions because of the problem of corruption, but I think that we should rather implement our laws. Whosoever is culpable, let the person be taken to court and then be properly tried, and then given that opportunity also of fair hearing, and then you sentence the person if he's guilty. If he's innocent, he goes home. I would rather suggest the strengthening of our judiciary. Let's begin to have judiciary that actually understand the philosophy behind the issue of corruption and where we are as a nation, and then show seriousness in tackling it. I don't want judiciary that it gives what we call preferential judgment in most of the things they do. That a big man comes before the court. Now you have not moved an application for bail. You as a judge goes ahead and grants him bail, and then waiting for an application for bail to be heard, whereas you have asked the man to go home. You don't do that same thing when it concerns a poor man. Then that is preferential. So I wouldn't like that.
The appropriate sentence for corruption in Nigeria: 1. All the properties of the corrupt person upon conviction should be seized. Then, as Buhari has now organized single treasury account, the money seized from such sentenced corrupt people should be paid into that single treasury account. If you get convicted on charges of corruption, and after you have exhausted all avenues of appeals for a court system, then they should sentence the person to 30 years imprisonment.
The truth of the matter is that most corrupt people go scot-free. And it's not a question, really, it's not actually a problem of the courts per se, as some people have said. It has to do with the investigation, the prosecution. If a case is bad, you bring a case to court and it's not watertight, and it's very, very watery, that's little the judge can do. The judge will only convict or acquit based on evidence before them. Most of the cases we are seeing is that you see a compromise of the investigative process. So generally what you bring before the courts becomes a very watery case. And even when it's sometimes glaring to the public, because a lot of Nigerians do trial by public, you don't really see what goes in and out of court. And that's where the problem is. And the truth of the matter is that most of these corrupt officials have so much money to compromise the system. And if the investigative process is compromised, then the prosecution is dead. It becomes a BID case, brought in dead case. And when you see acquittals from courts, people will shout, oh, the courts are to blame. It may not be so. That is not to say that we don't have instances where some judgments are questionable, but there are avenues to redress that. The truth of the matter is that even sometimes you see prosecution. A corrupt official is acquitted. How do we test some of these decisions? How many appellate actions have been taken in respect of this? Immediately this thing comes into place, you see a lot of policies of government influence here and there. So more often than not, you need the sincerity of the prosecution, the sincerity of the government to ensure. So I don't really think it has to do with whether it is capital punishment or not.
I think if the system guarantees consequences for corruption, it will have a deterrent effect. And I don't think we should extend it further by taking away the life of whoever is involved in corrupt activity, because the deterrence factor may have been lost, because once you are dead, you don't know what is happening. It's only somebody who's alive that can shout hallelujah. So my impression is that I'm certainly not in support of death penalty for combating corruption. I will more readily agree with the imposition of stiffer prison terms. And again, it's also important that why do we have the prevalence of corruption in society? It's because there are no consequences. Again, we should also be able to limit opportunities that could give rise to corruption. So if there is a regime in place that ensures that trials can be fast-tracked and that there is certainty of punishment for those who engage in corrupt activities, as well as an effective mechanism for loot recovery, such that the origin of the corruption itself, or the dirty funds arising from, or dirty property arising from corrupt activities, are forfeited, effectively forfeited